Am I sharing?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we are on the 12th lesson in about the middle of the chapter in the 14 books of the 14 lessons. After each life, there's a sort of boiling down of the experiences and the result. The real result of the experience goes to make up a part of the new self, the improved self, which will after a while seek a new body into which to reincarnate. But with many of us, there is a total loss of memory of our past lives. As we progress, we bring with us a little more consciousness each time. And many of us today have occasional glimpse of remembrance of past existence. We see a scene for the first time, and it seems wonderfully familiar, and we cannot have seen it before. There is a sort of haunting memory which disturbs. We may see a painting, some old masterpiece, and we feel instinctively as if we had gazed upon it away in the dim past, and yet we have never been near it before. We read some old book and it seems like an old friend, and yet we have no recollection of ever having seen it in our past life. We hear some philosophical theory and we immediately take to it, as if we knew we were as if it were something known and loved in our childhood. Some of us learn certain things as if we're relearning them, and indeed, such is the case. Children are born and develop into great musicians, artists, writers, or artisans from an early childhood, even though their parents possess no talent of the kind. Shakespeare's spring from Shakespeare's spring from the families whose members possess no talents and astonish the world. Abraham Lincoln's come from similar walks of life, and when responsibility is placed upon them, show the greatest genius. These and many similar things can be explained only upon the theory of previous existence. We meet people for the first time, and the conviction is borne upon us irresistibly, in spite of our protest, that we have known them before, that they have been something to us in the past, but when? Certain studies come quite easy to us, while others have to be mastered by hard labor. Certain occupations seem the most congenial to us, and no matter how many obstacles are placed in our way, we still work our way to the congenial work. We are confronted with unforeseen obstacle or circumstances called to the display of unusual power or qualities on our past and law. We find that we have the ability to perform the task. Some of the greatest writers and orators have discovered their talents by accident. All these things are explained by the theory of spiritual evolution. If heredity is everything, how does it happen that several children of the same parents, differ so widely from each other, from their parents, and from the relationship of both sides of the house? It is all heredity of reversion. Then pray tell us, from whom did Shakespeare inherit? To whom did he revert? Argument after argument might be piled up to prove the reasonableness of rebirth, but what would it avail? Man might grasp it intellectually and admit that it and admit that it was a reasonable working hypothesis. But that intellectual conception ever gave peace to the soul, gave it that sense of reality and truth that would enact it to go down the valley of the shadow of death without faltering, with a smile on his face. No, such certainty comes only from the light which the spiritual mind sheds upon the lower mental faculties. The intellect may arrange the facts and deduce a course of action from them, but the soul is satisfied only with the teachings of the Spirit, and until it receives them, must feel that unrest and uncertainty that comes when the intellect unfolds and asks that almighty question, why, which it cannot answer. The only answer to the query is rebirth a fact? Is does your soul recognize it as such? Until the soul feels of itself that the theory is true because it coincides with that inner conviction, there is no use in arguing that the matter. The soul must recognize it for itself, must answer its own question. It is true that the presentation of the theory we call a theory, although the yogis know it is a fact, will awaken memories in the mind of some, may give them the courage to consider reasonable the half-formed thoughts and queries which have floated around in their mind for years. But all is but that is all you can do until the soul grasps the and feels the truth of rebirth. It must wander around working on the subconscious plane of life, having rebirth forced upon it by its own desires and longings, losing consciousness to the great extent, but after the soul has begun to feel the truth, it is never the same. It carries with it memories of the past, sometimes faint and sometimes clear, and it begins to manifest a conscious choice in the matter of rebirth. Just as does the plant work on the subconscious plane, and the animal on the semi conscious plane, and the man on the gradually increasing planes of consciousness, so does man gradually evolve from subconscious stage of birth. On the semi-conscious plane and then on, increasing his consciousness from time to time until he lives on the conscious plane, both in his physical life and during the rest period. And in the new birth, there are men among us today, few, it is true, but many more than most people imagine, who are fully conscious of their past existences and who have been so since early childhood, only that their days of infancy were passed in a dreamlike state until their physical brains were sufficiently developed to enable the soul to think clearly. In fact, many children seem to have a dim consciousness of the past, but fearing the comments of their elders, learn to stifle these bits of remembrance until they fail to evoke them. Those who have not awakened to the truth of rebirth cannot have it forced upon them by argument, and those who feel the truth of it do not need the argument. So we have not attempted to argue the matter in a short presentation of the theory. Those who are reading this lesson are attracted toward the subject by reason of interest awakened in some past life, and they really feel that there must be some truth in it, although they may not as yet have arrived at the point where they can fully assimilate it. Many of those who upon whom the truth of the proposition is borne home by their inmost feelings of fragmentary recollections evince a disinclination to fully accept it. They fear the idea of being reborn without their constant consent or knowledge. But as we have stated to them, this is a groundless fear. For if they are really beginning to feel the truth of rebirth, their period of subconscious manifestation on that plane is passing away. Many say that they have no desire to live again, but they really mean that they would not like to live just the same life that they have. Of course not. They do not want the same experiences over again. But if there is a single thing in life that they would like, a single position that they would like to fill, a single desire that they feel needs to satisfy in order to make them happy, then they do really want to live again to secure the missing things. They are here because they wanted to be here or had desires which cried for satisfaction. And they will live again in just the circumstances needed to gratify their desires or wishes, or that are likely to give them the necessary experience for higher spiritual growth. To the student of the subject of spiritual evolution, a great world of interesting facts open itself. Light is thrown upon history and progress of mankind, and the most fascinating field of research is presented. You must resist the temptation to go into the branch of the subject, as it would lead us into attractive paths which we are reborn to take up in these elementary lessons owing to the lack of space. We may find room, however, to say little about these matters. The Earth is one of a chain of planets belonging to our solar system, all of which are intimately connected with others in this great law of spiritual evolution. Great waves of life deep sweep over the chain, carrying race after race along the chain from one planet to another. Each race stays on each planet for a certain period, and then, having developed, passes onto the planet next highest in the scale of evolution, finding their conditions best suited to its development. But this progress from planet to planet is not circular. It resembles a spiral circling round and yet rising higher with each curve. Let us suppose a soul dwelling upon any planes of planets or of our planetary chain in a comparatively undeveloped state of spiritual growth, occupying a low place in the scale of evolution. The soul gains the experiences coming to it in that stage in a number of incarnations and then is swept away toward the next highest planet in the chain, together with the rest of the particular race, and is reincarnated there. In this new home, it occupies a plane distinctly in advance of the one occupied in the last. Its entire race forming the nucleus of the new race there, some being pioneers while others follow after. But still, this advanced stage, as compared with its stage on the planet just left behind it, may be much lower in the scale of progress than the other races dwelling on the same planet with it. Some of the races lowest in the point of evolution on this earth may have been much nearer the highest stage of development on the last planet inhabited by them, and still they have progressed greatly by the changed. The highest on the lower planet, perhaps being less highly developed than the lowest on the farther along the planetary chain. Many of the races that formerly inhabited the earth, traces of whom we occasionally find, have passed on to a higher stage of development. History shows us that race after race came to the front in the earth's development, played their part upon the stage of action, and passed on. Where? The occult philosophies furnish the missing link of explanation, and our race has grown from the Stone Age stage and still further back and will continue to progress and will then pass on, making way for some newer race, which may be even now sending out pioneers from some other planet. This does not mean necessarily that each race that history tells us of has passed from the earth. On the contrary, occultists know that some, and in fact, most of the races known to history have incarnated in some of the races today. The confusion is explained by the fact that each race has several subraces which really belong to the main race. For instance, occultists know that the ancient Egyptians, the Romans, the Greeks, the Atlanteans, the ancient Pers- Persians, etc., are now living on this earth. That is the souls which formerly incarnated in these races and now incarnated in some of the modern races. But there are other races, prehistoric races, which have passed away from the Earth's attraction entirely and have gone on to higher planes of action in the higher planets. There are a number of planets lower in the scale of progress than our Earth, and there are several higher toward which are moving. There are, of course, other solar systems, other chains of sun, other sub universes, if they may be pardoned for using the term, and all this ahead of every soul, no matter how lowly or how humble. Our race at present is going through a most important period of evolution. It is passing from the unconscious stage of spiritual development into the conscious stage. Many have already attained their conscious stage, and many more are awakening to it. A whole race will ultimately have it. This may be this being precedent on them on their moving on. This gradual awakening to spiritual consciousness is what is causing all this unrest in the world of thought. This breaking away from old ideals and forms, this hunger for the truth, this running to and fro after new truths and old truths restated. It is the critical period in the history of race, and many hold that it implies an impossible division of race into two subraces, one of whom will be possessed with spiritual consciousness and move on ahead of the remaining subrace of the slower brothers, who must work up by degrees. But the race will again be united before it finally passes on to earth. And it is bonded together by the law of spiritual cause and effect. We are all interested in each other's progress, not only because we are brothers, but because our own soul must wait until the whole race develops. Of course, the more rapidly developed souls does not have to be reincarnated simply because its slower brother has to do so. On the contrary, the higher developed soul spends a long period of waiting on the higher planes of the astral world, while the slower brother works his evolution in repeated births to the sojourn in the higher planes, giving the developed soul great happiness and benefit, as explained in other lessons. Many of these waiting souls, however, choose to sacrifice their well earned rest by coming back to earth and help uplift their brethren, either in the form of astral helpers or even by a deliberate and conscious rebirth, which is not needed for their development. They deliberately taking on the body of flesh with the burdens in order to assist their weaker brothers toward the goal. The great teachers of souls have been largely composed of self sacrificing souls who voluntarily renounced heaven. For the love of their fellow man, it is very hard to imagine that great sacrifice this is coming back to comparatively low development civilization from a higher plane of spiritual development. It is like Emerson doing missionary work among the Bushmen. Toward what goal is all this evolution tending? What does it all mean? From the low forms of life to the highest, all are on the path, and what on the path? To what place or state does the path lead? Let us attempt to answer by asking you to imagine a series of millions of circles, one within each other. Each circle means a stage of life. The outer circles are filled with life in its lowest and most material stages, each circle nearer the center holding higher and higher forms until men of what men were men become as gods. Still on and on does the form of life grow higher until the humankind cannot grasp the idea. And what is in the center? The brain of the entire spiritual body, the absolute God, and we are traveling towards the center. So that leaves us to start on the 13th lesson tomorrow.
Thank you for reading.
Sure. I knew we were close to the end. That's why I just kept going.
Yeah, I was gonna say if she, because I'm reading the actual book, so I could see we were close. I was gonna say if you just stopped, I would have been like, keep going. Has anyone experienced this where they feel like they remember a past life?
No.
I think there's certain things that I'm drawn to, which could be from my past lives. But you know what I was thinking? You know how Sue used to always talk about paint when she saw like a painting, she could feel the energy of the artist and the this and the that. And I was like, maybe that's because she painted it in her past life.
Yeah, I never did. I never felt it either, and I never even understood. Or it's not that I wasn't even aware that this was a thing, probably until my like yoga teacher training. And so now I'll be sitting here and I'll like be like, why am I so attracted to this? It doesn't make any sense. But I'm like, maybe it's just part of something.
Yeah.
I like that they talk about like hereditary, like it's so like you may see this all the time if you have siblings or if you've just witnessed other siblings, like you have the three of the same siblings. I'm talking about my family, and like you're also different from your parents, and like what makes that difference? And you're different from your parents, and you have different things from your parents, but you also have things outside of your parents.
Yeah.
It's like, why are some people good at some things and maybe they've been practicing it forever?
Yeah.
Or you know, like the child geniuses, like the Tiger Woods of golf. Like he spent his whole past life golfing, or Serena Williams of tennis type of thing.
Yeah.
My brother. I don't know if I'm connected. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sometimes my connection's weird outside. My brother, when he was really little, like he was in his car seat. So, oh my God, this was like 17 years ago or 16. He said to my mom, he's like, what happened to my other mom? She's like, what other mom? Yes. And he was like, you know, the one with the dark hair. She used to always smile. And she was like freaked out. She was like, oh my God, he's like 1.5, 2 years old.
Oh my God.
She's so freaked out by that. So who knows?
Yeah, that's freaky.
That is very freaky.
Someone in my teacher training felt like she like had glimpses or images of like a previous life. Like I don't know if it was like through a sleeping dream or an awake dream, like a daydream type of thing, but she would have these like images that she felt were like glimpses.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a while and since she told us in detail, so I don't want to put words in her mouth, but that was like the only person I've ever run into. But I've never really surrounded myself with people who studied or believe this. And I like that I highlighted the first time I read like what is rebirth a fact? Like the answer to that question is, does your soul recognize it as such? And it's like you can't. I just like that. I'm also like envisioning our whole solar system. Like, you know how we like send people up there? It's like humans can't live on Mars. There's no life on Mars. But like, if you read this, it's like maybe there is life on Mars and we just are too ignorant and stupid to see it. Not to be like, I mean, I guess I'm being harsh on purpose, but like these people that go there, like, oh, well, humans can't live there, but maybe there are other souls living up there. We just don't see them. They don't need the same things we need to survive.
Yeah, there's so much we don't know.
Yeah, and we're going up there and disturbing everything with our footprints, like literally stomping around and smushing things. And I like the idea at the end, these like millions of circles within each other, like the outermost being like the lower planes of man. And as you move inward, you're on your higher forms. And there's so many people out here who think that they're in here. And they still have so much learning to do.
Yes. And so I always lead with that mindset of, you know, there's always something I don't know, and there's always a room for growth, because that is the real reality.
Yeah. I'm laughing. Tomorrow's first sentence for spiritual cause and effect, Lauren, is life is the constant accumulation of knowledge, the stirring up of results of experiences.
Love it. I'm
That
right on track.
I have it highlighted. So that's how we start off tomorrow. Is exactly what we're saying. Like, we just have to keep learning and we have to keep unlearning. I mean, honestly, like for me, it's like I had to stop judging. I'm still a little judgmental, but like when people tell me, oh, I remember my past life, like I'm not so quick to be like, no, there's no way that you remember. Like, how am I supposed, who am I to say what you remember or not remember?
Yeah. I love like that we don't know a lot about the ocean as well. Like,
yeah,
you're going from an extreme to Mars. Like, I don't know. We don't know a lot about everything, but
the ocean is fascinating to me. Like, I was there yesterday. I could stare at the ocean all day, and I love to be in the ocean. Like, I love to swim in it, but I will not go past where I can't reach.
Yeah.
Because it is a scary, and I'm afraid of fish too. I wish I wasn't, but I just am. I've tried to not be, but I've gotten a little bit better. But yesterday we were just watching the whole dynamic of like the seagull on the beach. There was a crab. It attacked the crab. It was eating the crab. There were 20 other birds around, like trying to inch closer, and like they're all puffing out their chest. Just watching this happen in real life and not on some Discovery Channel TV was so cool. It was like a whole crab, and he just went to town. I'm like, I paid $20 to eat this crab at a restaurant. He's just like munching away, or she, I don't know what kind of bird it was, but, and then it started to like fall apart and other birds were coming in, and like it was low tide. So all the birds were just like at the shoreline, just like looking for food to wash ashore. And it's just like, and then I went in to the water. I saw this like little tiny fish swim by, and I like, normally I freak out and I run back to my chair, but I'm getting better. So I was like, okay, it's okay. You can still go. So I went in. And and like seaweed's touching me, and you're like, you don't know what's touching you. And you're like, please let it be seaweed just touching me. Like, there's shells at your feet. And then you go a little bit further, and like, who knows what lies there? It could be sharks and dolphins and whales and seals and all this fun stuff.
It is amazing.
Yeah, it's a whole nother, it's like a universe, within our earth down there.
I wish we took better care of it.
Oh yeah, and like there were the beach, like swimming closed. It was like 6 o'clock, and these 4 people were coming by with garbage picker uppers and like bags, and they were just cleaning up the shoreline because like one bird was chewing on a straw. Long Beach, I think, does a pretty good job with their garbage, but
yeah, I actually am on a cleanup team. They do it weekly.
Yeah, I've seen them post because I follow them on Instagram, but these people did not have that Long Beach cleanup gear on. They just were like 4 people that I don't know if they were just doing it because this is what they do, or But I've also taken a bag before, and before I sit down, I clean up all the garbage around me, and then I sit down. Just 'cause that happened at not Long Beach, but a different beach, because I'm like, this is disgusting. I don't want to sit in other people's garbage. A really fun volunteer project, if you've never done it, is through Operation Splash. They're based out of Freeport, but they have boats. I've gone out of East Rockaway, and they're these tiny, like, they look like you just walk on like a wood plank. You're like, how is this floating? It's really fun, and they bring you into all like the channels and bays in between the ocean and Long Island, and you don't realize how much garbage goes there because all the drainage from the roads go into there. So anyone that litters like in front of my house, like I always make sure to clean up my street. I live on a corner, and it always attracts, like, there's McDonald's down the block, so like there's always like a McDonald's straw or cup or something. So I always try to grab it before it hits the drain, because that drain goes into the ocean.
Yeah.
So it's a really fun volunteer project, and kids are welcome on it too. I don't know what the age minimum is, but it's a family fun day. And they give you gloves and a garbage picker upper. But yeah, it's amazing how much garbage there is.
Yeah. Sad. Okay.
All right, let's do some breath work and meditate. Start our Thursday. All right.
If I drop off early, have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for reading.
No problem. All right, so stay up nice and tall, taking 3 breaths in through the nose, out through the nose. We can take our right hand over to our face, close the right nostril with the thumb, inhale through the left, close left, exhale right, inhale right, close right, exhale left, inhale left, close left, exhale right, inhale right, close right, exhale left, inhale left, close left, exhale right, inhale right, close right, exhale left. You can continue on a few more rounds. I'm going to set the timer. You can join us when you're ready. Bringing your hands to your heart. Namaste.
Namaste.